We can keep going. I can go and get the food.
This is, I got to tell you, I don't want you to finish the story. This is, bar none, I've done too many of these to count. This is the best one ever. You are doing an incredible job. I've never seen its equal, and it happens to be you. This is incredible.
Yeah, you've been
stuff
really
that
relaxed.
You can see in a documentary. It's awesome.
Well, anyway, I got on the 12,000-foot runway, and a test flight, of course, well, every flight you got at the end, because the old favorite saying of runway behind you and altitude above you, the two most useless things in the world. And so, anyway, I was on the end of the runway, and you always figure your speed in a T-30 or your break ground speed, and you don't go by that. Well, at the break ground speed on this day, that plane, I could not force the nose of that airplane off, and I was accelerating very fast, and I gave it probably another 500 feet and aborted. Well, in my panic of aborting, I hit the brakes so hard it blew the tires right off of the wheels and ground the wheels down to the axles. But I kept it on the runway most of the time till the very end. It kind of went off into the dirt. They came out there and they said, the engine, of course I shut the engine down real quick. Well, they said, what was it, your engine? And I says, I don't know, but the airplane didn't want to fly. And they got in there, and one of the mechanics came up and says, hey, so we know what it is. Boy, they kept that accident quiet.
Was there another pilot that went up too quick? Because he had all of your weights?
He didn't. No, he would have checked. There wouldn't have been any in there. He would have known.
Yeah.
A test pilot would have known.
Yeah.
You've got to have that weight in there, but not two of them.
Yeah.
I imagine we were talking about 200 pounds. Those lead weights were heavy. A machine gun weighed about, a 50 caliber weighed about, I guess, 100 pounds. And out in the very front of the nose, yeah, I could have probably got it flying. They said I could, you know, if I kept going. But if I'd have landed, it'd have washed out and killed me.
Yeah.
And you couldn't eject without in a T-33. They didn't have the Martin Baker seat in it. That could have been bad, but it wasn't. Pretty much followed the procedure in it. And that'll get us. No, wait a minute. Your mother and I got married.
When'd you ask her?
We converted to B-58s, B-57, excuse me. And they picked myself and Bob Stunkard and another T-33 instructor qualified pilot to start a school for jet training. And this was just before Christmas in 1954, 55, 56. No, 55, we'll say. I get it. Anyway, it's just before we started moving to Blytheville Air Force Base from Hill Air Force Base. And so they assigned me and Bob Stunkard to open the ground school and start getting to check out as instructor pilots in the T-33. We had to have 200 hours minimum to be an instructor pilot in the T-33. So we got checked out immediately. They sent us 3 old T-33s from tactical headquarters, and we got checked out immediately, and then we started just flying every time we could, getting instrument training and everything so we could be instructors. Anyway, then I started going through, I took a course from Lockheed and teaching the ground school for the T-33, which is pretty complex. And This all fits into when I went to ask your mother to marry me. Then I went to, got totally checked out in the ground school to teach at, while Bob concentrated on instructing, flight instructing, getting the course curriculum for checking the people out in the air, which I already knew. And so that was right about Christmas time, and we had to start the school in the second week of January, the T-33 training school, to start checking out all the field grade officers in jets, while the combat crews all went to Randolph Field to get checked out in the B-57. And so they let me have 10 days off at Christmas. And so I took the train so I could study all the curriculum to teach the ground school, so I could study. It took a day and a half on the train to get to Nashville. Plus, it was free if you wore your uniform because of the Korean War. They were still letting soldiers with uniforms on travel free. And so I took the train. Well, first I got a ring that Susie has. I picked that out. I didn't pick it out myself because there was a major that lived right next door to me in the bachelor's quarters that was a jeweler, that was a gemologist. And he worked for one of the biggest gemology companies in Chicago. And I told him I was looking for a ring. He said, well, come on, I'll go with you. I'll make sure you get a good stone. And I told him what I could afford. I said, I can afford 1 month's pay. That's $400, I think, or something like that, and that's it. He said, I'll get you a good buy. And he said, most likely, the best I can do is a 55 point, but it'll be perfect. And he went in the jewelry store with me and picked out a perfect stone. So your Susie's got a perfect 55 point diamond ring. That's about a little over a half carat. It was a lot for me, and that's how I picked out a ring. And I wrapped it up. She didn't know I actually never asked her to marry me. I just gave her the ring on Christmas Eve night.
Mm-hmm. She got the hint. What was that like? What did she say?
She's thrilled. She went and woke up Aunt Dee and Andy, and I gave it to her after they went to bed. And not Andy, Fred, Uncle Fred.
Uh-huh.
And that's how we got engaged. Then I had to go back, and then I was really into heavy. Boy, I was working. Bob and I were going all the time. Boy, he helped me in ground school, teach some of the stuff that he could do, and we were checking out field grade officers as fast as we could take them to the school. And then it came June, and I was running that school pretty hefty, and it was going well. And that was another story. They had to have a new T-33 plane picked up in Palmdale, California, at the Lockheed plant. And so Bob and I flew out to Palmdale 3 or 4 days before I was supposed to leave to get married. and the weather was okay going out there. Well, we had to take off through some 20,000 foot clouds, but we flew out to Palmdale and got out there, and the plane was ready. I had to go over a lot of transfer for a new airplane stuff and go over some limitations they'd put on a new plane. And the weather was too bad in Las Vegas and Hill Air Force Base. Well, you can't ferry a new plane. There's a regulation. You can't ferry a new plane in weather. So we asked Lockheed, is there any way we can get to so we'll have a car take you. We wanted to go into town and see. Neither one of us had been to Hollywood. Mm-hmm. So we went to Lockheed provided us a car to take us into and pick us up, and that night. But that's where we saw Cinerama. That's the only theater in the United States. It was the first few months, and we got to see Cinerama. This is Cinerama, And we went back and we got out there and I signed for the airplane and we could get as far as Las Vegas. And we landed at Nellis Air Force Base and the weather was really bad in Ogden. Really stinking. I mean, clouds were down to, 1,000 feet, solid to 20,000 feet or something like that. So we had to spend the night at Nellis. So we got a staff car to take us into from Nellis to the casinos, and neither one of us had any money. Had $20 between us, and I had it all. And so I gave Bob $10 and I took 10. This is all we had left. We thought we were all going to go out there and get the plane and come back the same day. You heard this story too. I gave Bob $10 and he's a high roller. He got his in silver dollars and I got mine in nickels. And I went over to the nickel side. All of a sudden over there I hear the sirens going off and the lights go around the casino like this. He hit a royal jackpot on his, I think, the second or third silver dollar. He got $200 plus all these silver dollars that came coughing out of the machine. It's quite a bit of money.
Yeah.
And so we really lived it up. The rest went out and spent the night, and boy, I was supposed to be leaving that day, and here I was still in Las Vegas at Nellis Air Force Base, and the weather was bad. And I said, Bob, he said, I tell you what, out west over Douglas Proving Grounds, I think it's called Douglas, where it's absolutely restricted. Out that part towards the Salt Lake Desert, he said, the weather's not so bad. He said, we got enough fuel. Let's get enough fuel to go over there and see if we can find a break and go down without going through the weather. And if we can't, we'll come back to Nellis and land. So we took off, flew formation, and man, we got into the clouds. At 32,000 feet, we were solid overcast. I got I can't think of the word now, that's bad. But I got so disoriented. Anyway, I thought we were in a turn. He had to make a turn to stay on the airway. And boy, we were so solid, I had to overlap my tip tank with his. It was so solid. That's how bad it was. And I mean, I was so uptight. Here I was breaking Air Force regulations in this brand new T-33. Even back then, they cost $300,000 or $400,000. And anyway, we got in, and I said, Bob. Anyway, I got whatever it was called. He says, "Okay, I'll get you out of it." And he says, "I'm gonna jerk the plane to the right." So he jerked it to the right like that to get me out of the turn. He actually just jerked it like that, and that got me out of the turn, and we were okay then. I got my bearings back because I couldn't look at my instruments. I had to look at him. If you're looking at him, any motion he makes, you don't necessarily come out of it, if you're inexperienced. And I was definitely inexperienced in formation flying in weather.
Yeah.
But we broke out of that, and we got up about to Provo, south of there, and we turned towards the prohibited area. That's not warning area, that's prohibited area. That's where they carried the pop poison gas and all that stuff. And there, sure enough, there was a hole there. And boy, we dropped it like rocks down. We went down through this little old hole, and it's about 500 feet. And we went in low level into hill, and there was sprinkling rain and everything. And I taxied the new plane in, and here comes this old fathead, called him Light Colonel. He says, "How the hell did you get that airplane in there without going into the clouds?" And then he said, "Never mind." And he said, "We were just getting ready to send the DC-3 down there to pick you up because they knew I was getting married. I was already a day late." That's how I got started. It was in June. I went up through the mountains, and I went through a snowstorm in the mountains at 3 or 4 in the morning. I drove for hours and hours to get out of the mountains. I drove till it was dangerous, terribly dangerous, and stopped and slept. Got there 2 days late. They'd already had missed some of the parties that they're supposed to have for us, and
Oh boy, how was Mom with all that?
she was okay. She understood better than some of them, better than
Ellie?
No,
Dale?
I don't remember anything about them. He was such a horse's ass. What was his name?
Aubrey.
Aubrey. But Mama D was okay. I got really ticked off because I took my dress uniform. I wanted to get married in my dress uniform.
Yeah.
And they changed the wearing apparel at the last minute. They thought, and I guess that was Mama D.
You had to wear a tie?
It sure as hell, yeah. Dinner jacket. And my mother and dad were out of place, and I got really ticked off because somebody after the wedding at the reception came to me and says, "You got to be sure and thank Uncle Fred and Aunt Dee for all they've done for her," and that excuse me.
That's all right.
That ticked me off very, very bad. I was really ticked off about it. I didn't ever tell Shirley about that for a long time, but it made her mad too that anybody, because I had thanked them. Yeah, they did it for her. Shirley should have thanked them, which she did very much. I was marrying their adopted daughter. I didn't need to be told anything etiquette-wise.
Right.
I might have been a country hick, from a small town, and we certainly didn't know all the etiquette of a big city wedding. And I know Mother got a little upset. That is okay.
Well, I don't think
Harry
Mama
was my
D
best
would've-
man. Did you know that? Harry was my best man.
Yeah.
And the president of Genesco, one of the biggest shoe companies in America, was an usher. They had some good friends. Uncle Fred did.
Yeah.
Of course, I didn't know anybody.
Well-connected lawyer.
General, forget the general's name, is a reserve general in the Air Force. Anyway, where next? You got any more time?
Well, I can go get what time do you have?
I've got 5 to 5.
I can go get the stuff, and you can keep talking.
Well, we'll go through we're beginning to catch up now.
Yeah, where did y'all go on a honeymoon? Did you have one?
Didn't have a honeymoon. The honeymoon was the drive from Nashville to Ogden, Utah, to Hill Air Force Base. We stayed 2 nights in a motel in Nashville, and then we headed out. We went to, we went up to Paducah, Kentucky, and spent the first night, and then went to St. Louis and spent 3 nights there. We went to the theater. We went to see an opera of some type. I can't remember which one it was. La Boheme. We went to see that Shirley wanted to see. It was good too. I still remember the music, I think. And then we went to the zoo. The St. Louis Zoo is one of the better ones in the U.S. Used to be. Then we headed across country in an unair-conditioned car in June, and Shirley got a terrible migraine headache, and we had to stay in a motel. All motels didn't have air back then, and an unair-conditioned. It got so bad that we actually had to leave one and drive on. She had such a bad migraine. She got over it about Rock Springs. Rock Springs is a beautiful city in the mountains after Cheyenne, Wyoming. And it's a beautiful river that flows through there, and it's real cool, mountain cool, and she started feeling better there. And I rented a cute little old house. It was just a 2-bedroom house, and the nights in Ogden got right cold. It was 4,000 feet above sea level, and you could look out our front door through a beautiful willow tree, a bi-willow tree, and the mountains went up 11,000 feet. As I recall, they occasionally had a little bit of snow on the caps of them in the summer. And we only stayed there. She felt wonderful out there, no migraines because of the dry air, we assumed. The dry air and the...
Now, which place was this?
This was in Layton, Utah. This was in Ogden, Utah. And it was a cute little old place. And that's when I think she and I got to go down and hear the Mormon Tabernacle Choir while she was there, but we didn't get to do much. I was really having to work a lot and fly a lot, getting all of these people checked out in the jet. But I think she liked it there very, very much. It was completely furnished. We didn't have anything. And then about 4 months later, they said, because of my experience in the teaching and everything and setting up operations, I had experience by this time in operations because that's where we were working out of, Hill Air Force Base, and operations and everything. They came to me and said, well, you're pretty well trained in operations. Would you like to volunteer to be one of the first 3 officers to go to Blytheville Air Force Base? And I said, well, let me ask my wife. And I said, you want to go back close to Nashville and live in Blytheville? And she jumped all over it to get back close to friends. And I said, yeah, I'll do it. They said, well, we don't have much money for moving quite yet, but we need to have an operations officer, we need to have a supply officer, and a wing commander. And so they said, well, you're the perfect one for it. If you don't have, I says, if you'll pay me travel, per diem, and enough to rent a trailer to print what we got. By then we'd accumulated. Bought Shirley a chair, a rocking chair. She loved to rock, as you remember. And we had that and enough stuff to fill a 6x8 travel trailer up, pull trailer. And so they sent us to Blytheville, and we rented a little unair-conditioned apartment first, and it was absolutely no, it was sort of in the attic, and she couldn't take that. We stayed there 2 weeks, and we found this place down on Main Street, a bottom floor apartment, and it had high ceilings, and it was bearable. But she was suffering. So I remember brother-in-law Tom was in Carrier at Nashville, and Carrier Air Conditions, and he got me a 12,000 BTU Carrier that at those times it was humongous. It would just barely fit into a window.
12,000.
Just a 1-ton, but it would do our apartment, and it kept Shirley, and I had to pay to have the 220 put in, 220 to put it in. And she was very comfortable. It was very convenient. We were only 3 blocks from downtown Blytheville, and very convenient. And about that time, she got a job teaching school out right across the street from the Air Force Base. And she could take me to work, or I could have another officer pick me up if I had to, or she could get a ride out there. We worked out one car. I don't know where it went.
It's right there on the...
Oh. Hello? Okay. Be careful. Bye-bye.
I need to go get our food. You keep talking. I'll make a run to Publix. Is
Okay.
chicken?
All right, get chicken. You want chicken with us, Ricky?
Can we keep working?
Not while we eat.
No, but I mean, whatever.
And we'll go till we go. Yeah.
Fine.
Okay. Get 2 8-piece chickens and some potato salad.
Two 8-piece. Are the girls coming too?
No.
No.
They're going on now.
All right.
Okay,
Two
2
8-piece?
8. Yeah, get 2 8-piece. I'll pay you for it.
Well, no. But why are we getting 16 pieces?
Well, Kathy and I sometimes eat 8 pieces.
Oh, okay. No.
There'll be 4 of us.
Hot pocketed, Dad.
Here,
Chicken. I just want to know why we're getting 16 pieces.
just get it.
I'm just getting 2.
You don't only
I'm
want
a
2
pig.
pieces. Well, Ricky will eat 3 or 4 pieces, I know.
Part of this, I'm trying to pay.
Get it mixed. Get it mixed, please. Get some potato salad, and we'll have green beans. Are we on air or not?
Yeah, we're fine. Dad, this is. I've done so many of these. I've never done one even remotely as good as this. And it's phenomenal. You are incredible on camera. I'm just.
All right, here we go. Where were we, Ricky?
Air conditioning, mom.
Oh,
teaching
yeah.
School.
Okay, she started teaching school, and she was a fabulous teacher in one of the poorest schools, maybe in America at the time. And they were so poor, they were all cotton farmers. And but she did such a great job, and they had never had a really good teacher. And Shirley did a fabulous job. And anyway, that's where she, let's see some of the things that happened to her there. I was really good friends with all the flight surgeons, and we had a flight surgeon that was called into the service that was a, specialist that does face work.
I nose and throat.
I'm hit. I'm drawing a blank. Anyway, the do facelifts is his specialty even back then. And she'd always wanted this little rise taken out of her nose right here. And they weren't supposed to do work like that on civilians, but they had to get all their flying time with me. I was the only one that could fly the flight surgeon, because the only airplane we had at Blytheville at the time was an L-20, and it was my plane really there. And he says, hey, I need some practice. I'll take it out for her. And so he took her in the hospital, and he did a really technical job and lifted her nose and made her nose look real good. Felt so good after that. She felt better about doing that job.
I never had any idea she had plastic surgery.
He's a plastic surgeon. That's the name I was trying to think of.
Yeah, I didn't know.
Okay, and he put, the dentist was also very close also, and he put gold fillings in her mouth in place of regular fillings. And they lasted till the day she died. I mean, I got very good care from the medical staff, because they all had to played golf with the dentist. He didn't fly, but the flight surgeons, all of them were, the doctors in the Air Force were flight surgeons. They had to get 4 hours a month to get their flight pay. Anyway, she got good attention, your mother did, and she also got good attention at the gates and everything, because being one of the first 3 officers assigned there, when the air police were the officer was one of the next one, because they had to have security right off the bat. And he and I were the best of friends. And he made sure that we got good care going in and out of the base, and she got such a kick out of those guys saluting her going through the front gate. But let me see what else. We need to move on with her. then after that, we were only there not long, I think about a year maybe. And that's when I got out. And I didn't really know what I was going to do. I about decided I didn't want to go into the airlines because there was so much problems with divorce and everything in the airlines, and they were also getting laid off a lot at the time, and so we moved actually to Arcadia when we first got all out of the Air Force, and then I immediately got the job in Bartow as a ground school instructor. I stayed there a year and a half, and I decided definitely on the FAA, and in the FAA, and I applied for the FAA and went to my boss. I'd been there about a year and a half, and went to my boss and I said, I put in for the FAA and I'm hoping I'll be called pretty soon. I said, are you okay with that? He says, no, I'm not okay with it. I've got to have a 6 month notice because your classes last 6 months. I says, no, my contract says 2 weeks. He says, well, you're fired. And so I went to the personnel. He says, he can't fire you. I said, well, he's dismissed me, let's put it that way. So they gave me 2 weeks notice. And they, let's see now, Phil was born on that one. On that, they had to pay for Phil's. No, the Air Force paid for Phil's. They paid for your delivery. That's what it was.
So you were still in the Air Force when Phil was born?
No, but the Air Force, Shirley was pregnant when I was still in.
Yeah.
And so but they didn't pay much, I'll tell you that. And I didn't have hospitalization till I was in the FAA. Didn't have hospitalization till I was in a year or so. But anyway, I got hired on right away. And Shirley was pregnant with you then. And that's why they had to pay for your delivery and all of yours. But that's why the FAA called me, and I went in on the 9th of February, and I was only in Jacksonville, a week, and they sent me to Oklahoma City. And that's why I was in Oklahoma City when you were born. And I remember Harry calling me, you were born about 4 in the morning, I think. And Harry called me about 6 in the morning, our time out there, said you were born. But I couldn't leave. If you left the FAA then, they set you way back, and so that's why I didn't see you till you were 2 months old when I saw you the first time.
I wasn't bothered by it.
No, you weren't. As a matter of fact, you were living with a nurse at Dr. I can't remember his name. Anyway, the nurse of the doctor that delivered you took your mother in, and Phil. They had a great big room, a bedroom that was bigger than this room here. Had plenty, had a refrigerator, perfect for your mother. And I left the car with her the whole time I was in Oklahoma City. I rode out with another trainee. So it worked out very well. And I rented a house up here. That was absolutely the dumpiest place. It was $75 a month, and it was more than I could afford on $157 every 2 weeks. But anyway, that was our start. And then Mark was born in the house in 4848 Simona Drive South. You remember that? You don't remember?
Harborview?
Harborview at 4848 Simona Drive South. You ought to see it now. It's purple, still there. And the old hedge I put there out of myrtle, wild myrtle bushes was so high it's to the top of the house and served its purpose. And let's see.
So Mom lived in Bartow when I was born?
I got to think. Yeah. No, we lived in Lakeland. We lived in Lakeland. Then we moved from Bartow to Lakeland because she had a job as a private contractor as a speech therapist in Lakeland for a while, and helping our not too good salary. And I drove back and forth to Bartow to the Air Force Base, to the air base.
And the air base in Bartow is where you trained? Instructor?
No, I was instructor, and I primarily taught Air Force Academy cadets. It was just before the academy opened, and they were sending the cadets out to the contract primary bases, and I was assigned to train them in all the subjects, just basically. I forgot how long I kept them. I think I kept them 6 months, and they by that time they would go to an advanced Air Force base until the academy opened, and then they would have they had 2 full classes of cadets by then, so they could run the academy somehow. I'm not up on that, so I can't elaborate. And then we're at 4848 Simona Drive South, because that was the north side of town where I could drive to Hilliard relatively easy. And it was not an all-black area at all at that time. Harborview and Sherwood Forest were out there. It made my drive a little easier.
I remember some guy living on the street having an old airplane in his carport.
Well, that was Bill Sutton. He was the one that built the hangar behind his house. He rebuilt that airplane, Bill Sutton. He was 2 houses down from us on our right as you face the street. It was an interesting story about Bill. Bill was kind of had a screw loose, or whatever you call it. But he was really aviation minded, and he bought this Tri-Pacer, which was a 4-place plane. Had a tricycle landing gear on it. And it was fabric covered, made by Piper. And he had heard about the gold at Angel Falls in Venezuela. That there's a famous flyer named Angel that had gone up there and loaded his plane up with gold and crashed right at the top of the falls. He had heard that story. It was not true. It was true that his plane was up there, but it wasn't true that it was gold there. He found out later. So he fixed this airplane up. I mean, put a rebuilt engine in it, and my friend Bob, can't think of it right now, but who was an A&P mechanic, certified the engines, and he found a guy, a barber, that wanted to fly down there, and he was adventuresome. My barber, as a matter of fact, Hall was his name, out there. It was adventuresome. He said, I want to go with you. So the 2 of them eventually got the plane all ready and everything, and they got a little old cheap radio, and they took off and flew to Puerto Rico and Virgin Islands, and then flew from the Virgin Islands, I think it's Virgin Islands. No, I mixed up. Anyway, the island beyond Cuba. At that...
Barbados?
No. Anyway, they got permits and they flew into Caracas, Venezuela. And the police down there told him, says, you are not allowed to fly those falls. Absolutely not. They didn't pay any attention to them. They took off early one morning and flew up to the falls. They were high up, I mean, really in heavy terrain, or only natives went the river up that way. And he crashed. He thought he thought was a good landing field was nothing but this real high marsh grass. And his plane flipped upside down, but they didn't get hurt. And they were trapped up there. Their radios didn't work. And they said, well, the only way we'll ever get down and that they'll know we're alive was to go down the falls. And nobody had ever been down the falls. They were long, big. Sometimes they jumped. He hurt his foot real bad when he dropped down 20 feet. They had a small rope, but they lost it on one of the places where they were rappelling and descending, whatever you call them. And they finally got down to the bottom, and Bill Sutton says, I can't go any further. Says, Hall, if you can go any further, go ahead. Says, I'm gonna die right here. He laid up against a tree right by this river. And Hall said, this river goes somewhere. And he was in much better condition, the barber named Hall. And he went on down, in 2 days, he ran into these natives and told them he had a friend up the river there. So they gave him food, as such as it was. They went back up, and Bill was still alive. And they took him down the river to a settlement, and they got word. And they finally got back to Caracas, and they put him under house arrest. And there was a very famous entertainer named Arthur Godfrey. Arthur Godfrey had a humongous ranch, and he was very much in with the government down there. They loved him because he brought lots of money to Venezuela. And Arthur Godfrey had this twin-engine Gulfstream 159, one of the most beautiful private twin-engine planes in the world at the time. And he loved the FAA. FAA did him a big favor one time when he buzzed the tower in New Jersey and got in deep trouble, but they let him off. And he was always really a favorite of the FAA. And so Arthur Godfrey found out about it and got him taken off of house arrest and flew them to Florida in his plane. And that's pretty much the story. It probably would have been a good magazine article. But that's another story about Harborview.
I remember
your mother
came
could,
through.
yeah, your mother couldn't stand them. They were really kind of rough people. Then we decided to move to Rolling Hills, where we have. She could see that when we were there, by the way, she started. That's where I got the car. It was all rusted out, and I paid $225 for it, and it only had 17,000 miles on it, but it's all I could afford. She had a contract job then, teaching speech therapy for the school system, but it wasn't a permanent job. But that's how we paid for you all to go to Kitty College and for you to get special training there. And Phil was in the second grade. It was that second grade teacher that identified his dyslexia. It was about that time that we moved to Rolling Hills because of the school and her work, and a much better house, much nicer house.
What is stuff she did in theater and acting and things like that?
She didn't do that until we moved to Rolling Hills. And she got into little theater when we were in Rolling Hills, and I think she found out and met people that were familiar with Jacksonville Little Theater when she was a teacher at Normandy Village Elementary, right at first. and she got interested and had some time to participate. She started out, you know, doing what all of them did. She was stagehand and helped direct a little bit, the main director, and oh, I don't know. And then finally she got a job, and I think she did. I think the name of this one she finally starred in, or semi-starred in, was Midsummer Night's Dream, which I know nothing about at all, which I was never interested in and didn't give a hoot about it at all. But that was her thing. She loved it and was good at it. But she had to go to college, of course. That's when you all got left off at the theater while she was in classes at JU, and she'd use the movies to babysit y'all. I didn't
Town
really.
and country.
Well, there and others, Phil said, I didn't know much about that because I had to work when she was doing it. I worked all.
Edgewood. The Edgewood and the Town and Country, there were several.
Yeah.
I remember the old, the ticket taker at Town and Country didn't speak English, but she knew what Mom dumped us there for, and she'd let us come and go and get ice cream at the parlor and then come back to the theater because we'd stay there all day.
Yeah, well, that's funny. We still go by there to go over to Charlie's, you know, the old Town and Country. But let's see, let's go on because I can't last much longer. But that got us to that point, and she found out about Skinner's and getting Phil into dyslexia training. That's when I found out that I was so very dyslexic myself. And that was good because it started making me feel really good about myself. In those early days when I thought I was dumb, and I wasn't dumb. I couldn't read because I was very dyslexic. Going through that training with Phil, you know, I had to participate. I realized how dyslexic I was, and that helped my understanding of a lot of things about myself and why it was so hard for me to get through school. And nowadays they have such good training in it. It probably hurt you because you were dyslexic too, Rick. And
Only all the way from 1st to 12th grade, only ever read 3 books. Because it was so painful. I hated reading. Since then, thousands. But back then I hated it. It was horrible.
yeah, it was. Anyway, that part of it. And
Tell me about Mark. When did Mark come along? Where was he born? And
Mark was born at Baptist Hospital. And, oh, here are the girls. Mark was born in Baptist Hospital. And let's see who the dog. Hey, honey. We're about to stop because I'm giving out.
Oh, okay.
come on through.
Okay.
Phil's gone down to get the chicken and stuff, so.
Yeah, he just drove in, so.
Oh, he's here, huh?
The girls on the outside just, whoops. Sorry, I should be used.
But was born in Baptist Hospital, and that's where we dealt for a long time. And all the doctors at Baptist Hospital were ones we were friendly. Dr. Lane was y'all's pediatrician, or pediatrician.
John Lane, wasn't it?
Yeah, and he turned out to be a very good friend. Come on by, Kathy.
Oh, here, I had opened up around me.
Oh, I'm sorry.
John Lane turned out to be a good friend, and if I saw him today, he would still consider me a very good friend. He had a terrible automobile wreck that nearly ended his life, and he was so good for you all. He was really good pediatrician for all of you, and just like Dr. Lanier is good for Charlie because I was good friends with Dr. Lanier. And let's see, you remember when we moved into Rolling Hills, it was good for you all because y'all had such a good bringing up over there with the fields behind you. we have fond memories of that with you taking off with your parachute that day. I saw you going across the backfield, hit that damn ditch and threw you out of the wagon. I knew then you had a little crazy blood in you. But it was a good house. I remember Mom and Pop had a good time staying at the house. We got the pool table put in there. I think I did that as much for him for the short time he had left as I did for us. But he had almost gotten too old and out of it before he could enjoy it, but he enjoyed it. He could still shoot pretty good pool at his age. That was about, I guess, when he's about 87 or 88.
I remember. Phil, come here. We're wrapping this up. See if there's any more questions you want to ask.
We already at Rolling Hills and the pool table, and we're kind of rushing through there, and
Well, we've kind of abridged it here greatly.
but anyway, the pool table. I know I did the brick veneer work there. Had to put the pool table in first, and then I did the brick veneer work, and
Y'all really went fast.
we went the carport. You know, back then you could order a carport pre-made, and they brought it to me in a kit with all those long pieces and everything and instructions. And I guess you all helped me put it up. I don't remember ever getting any help. We attached it, you know, it served a good purpose back there. Had to move your basketball goal over to the other corner so you'd have a basketball goal. And I remember Ricky putting the garden hose in the sandbox back there and trying to cover it up. And it took in a whole length of garden hose. It started wandering off into the deep. It's still there.
Vacuum sucked it right into the ground.
Sucked that sucker in. He couldn't stop it. So finally, I guess you cut it off and covered it up with sand.
No, you cut it off. I just left it there and ran away. Didn't know that if I had just turned the water off, it would have stopped sucking it in.
But let's see what else. That's
I remember the magnificent trips down to Chetuckney.
yeah. We had
Mom and the neighbors.
yes, sir. Those were good trips. We went down so much we were almost good tour guides going down it. We sure knew that the Blue Hole and all the others. We had names for them, I think. But it's no fun now.
The Mill Spring.
Yeah, the Mill Springs where the Stokes and us and all of it. And of course,
Where you met the love of your life.
yeah, that's where Kathy and I met, on Itchituckney Springs. I can be thankful for them for that. And let's see.